It's here. Let's finish setting up. Yes. And okay. Okay, today we learn Lilu Nishmat Avigdor Chayavram Ben Merzir Achalea. In addition to that, today we also learn Lilu Nishmat the Rosh Yeshiva Rav Rabbi Novich Zechatzani V'Kodesh Libracha, whose Yartet is today. Also Mindel Rezel Bat Tzvia, and also Avram Ben Natan, for whom Avram Lifshitz is named. You were going to say something? You no? Okay. No. I thought you were about to add something. No.
They spent 4 hours.
I know. Baruch Hashem.
Yes, I will tell you something. He was an amazing man. He loved children.
He loved children.
He loved babies. He loved people.
Right. He was a people lover. He really did. I'm going to tell you, actually, it's Bamakom. I was going to mention something very brief. Okay. And it really fits in with this topic of Anava that we're doing. Perfect fit. Of course, look at the genius that he was and what he knew and what he wrote about. And so I was sitting with, he was still relatively healthy. He was sitting in Bnei Shmuel. It was after Mincha or Marav or whatever it was. And I went over to ask him a question. He was still sitting in his seat. I went over to ask him a question and he's listening. And I consulted with him on a number of things. And one time he says, why are these questions you bring me the hardest ones I get? I said, because otherwise, if they're easy, I'd answer them. I said, that's why I got to come to you. So it was like really some tough, wild ones I had to go to with. Anyways, so I asked him a question and he says, wait a minute, that's a halacha question. I said, yes. He said, he points to Rav Abin and says, there's the rabbi, the shul. Like that's who he was. And I learned a great lesson from that myself. What? No. If I were to ask him, like, what is his position? What's he think in general about, whatever, about conversion? Yeah, which I worked with him a little bit. Actually. No. Yeah, I'm talking about not can you do X, Y, and Z. No, I asked him a question. I'm making this one up. What happens if I took, the sabi spoon and I put it as halacha? It's a halacha Shulchan Aruch question. You just look up, ask the Rav, right? And I learned something very, very good from that. I found myself once in a position, not in a very unenviable position, sitting in a shul where there's a rabbi here in Israel, and none of the people in shul knew me, and an halachic issue came up, like really, you needed to know the answer like right then. So a few people came over to me, and I said, "What do we do?" Now I knew what the answer was. I said, I did exactly what he did. I said, "There's the Rav." So he taught by example, which is amazing. That's who Rav Yitzchak was. Who's loved, amazing individual. Right.
Brilliant person.
Right.
He was just
right. Larger than life. Very, very much so. And I only had the opportunity to know him for 10 years maybe. Okay, so we're going to continue in chapter 22, Perek Kaf Bet, on the topic of anava or humility. And we will be picking it up where the paragraph starts. On page in this book, page 136. But in any printing, it's the paragraph V'hinei ze ha'iyun. So we mentioned it last time that the topic of anava or humility breaks down into two major categories. One is our machashava, how we think and how we think about ourselves. The other is ma'aseh, what we actually physically do. Now, I want to disabuse you of a concept or an idea that anava, we talked a little bit last week also, is I'm the worst person in the world. I'm never going to amount to anything. It's horrible. There is such a concept. There are people. I think it's the issue of Navardak, that's their approach in life. But it's not. First of all, it's not a healthy one, and second of all, it's actually being a kfui tova. You're really, how do you say it in English? Ungrateful. You're being ungrateful because you're not accepting the gifts that Hashem gave us. So and once you accept it, what I do and what you do is all done because Hashem enables us to do it. Then I'm taking those gifts and using them, but you can't use it to say, "Wow, look how good I am at this."
It's a very deep-seated thing, though.
Yes.
It's not so simple.
Of course not. That's why it's only. That's why it's chapter 22 and not chapter 2.
10 years.
Oh, for sure.
For that.
I'll be sending a lot of people to you if I could.
But I just could say one thing.
Please.
One, and I don't know, not simple, because it's not a simple thing, but it comes from somewhere. it's not to blame anyone or anything, but some of us grew up in more critical
Right.
surroundings. So
Right.
it could be parents and it could be teachers and it could be a peer group, but
Right.
sometimes you could just ask yourself, like, whose voice is
Are you
that?
hearing in your head when you're here
You
saying
know,
that?
because,
Yes. Right.
Oh, that reminds me of, again, not blaming, just
Right.
understanding. Oh,
Right.
my father, yeah, he
Right.
used to like
Yep.
kind of say,
Yep.
oh, what are you doing? Or look at you, or how
Right.
you look,
Or you have the
whatever,
parent,
and then
right.
it's
Or
separate.
Or you have the
your voice
parent,
for me.
when you bring the test home from school, you got 97, only
Right.
97.
Right.
Really?
Right.
Yeah, the whole perfectionism and all that. Right. Yeah, exactly. So let's pick it up from, thank you. Let's pick it up from הנה זה. הנה זה העיון וההתבוננות הראוי לכל איש אשר שכלו ישר ולא מתעקש. Loosely translated, if you got a brain in your head, just think about this, pay attention and understand that we are not the person, we are not there's a word I'm looking for. This ideal of what we are is not necessarily what we are, the Shabbat. We're not supposed to praise ourselves over this. And again, this difference being proud of what you've accomplished or having pride or being haughty about it. When he realizes, when it's clear to him, he'll truly be an anav, will be a person who really is humble. Internally, remember, this starts from the inside. Okay, this starts from the inside. You have to realize who you are. Now, there's a story, a narrative. I don't like saying story when it comes to talk. There's a narrative in Sefer Shmuel Bet, and it's the basis for all the future times where there would be a Hachnasat Sefer Torah, which is where David brings the Aron the second time. The first time it kind of doesn't go well, but he brings the Aron the second time to Ir David. And as he's approaching Ir David with the Aron, he's doing cartwheels and all kinds of things are going on. And that's where they have torches and they gave out candy. That's why we do what we do today at a Hachnasat Sefer Torah. And Michal, his wife, is looking at the window going, oh my gosh. Oh, someone's going to post this on Twitter. Okay, David, this is not a good thing. Like, you have really debased yourself. And he said, this is for Hashem. Who am I? I'm a nobody. This is David HaMelech, the author of a large part of Tehillim, the author of, he's David HaMelech, the beginning of the Davidic dynasty. I'm a little person. Who am I? He says, how great are the people who have namuch ruach, means like low of spirit. It doesn't mean person who's dejected. It doesn't mean a person who recognizes who they are. In other words, they're not haughty about whatever they may have. They are anav. They have a sense of humility about who they are. How great is that? It says like this, that in the time when there's a Beit HaMikdash, Adam HaKayiv Olah, Schar Olah Biado. If a person brought a Korban Olah, then what did he have as a result? He had the reward from Hashem, as it were, for bringing the Korban Olah. Mincha, if he brought a Korban Mincha, Schar Mincha Biado, then he would have the reward of a Mincha. But a person who looks at himself and says, I'm a Tzelem Elokim, I've accomplished a lot, but it's only because Hashem helped me to do this, and I have no reason to lord this over anybody else, and I can be proud of myself. I'm just kind of reviewing what we said last week. It's as if that person brought all the korbanot in the world. What does it mean? It's a mashal. It's not meant to be taken literally. But it means that the value of a person, of a person's being an anav, is astronomical. Last night, I don't know if any of you remember who's who, what classes anymore, but in Tanya last night, I was playing a bit of a clip from Rav Silverberg, from whom I learned Tanya. He mentioned that there's only one thing that's mentioned in all the Talmud, that it says that Hashem Kiviyachol says, I and this individual cannot live in the same place. He says a person who is a Baal Gava, a person who's haughty, says, Ein ani v'hu yecholim ladur b'makom. Notice that I and he cannot live together. Why? Why is it? It doesn't say that about a person who's a murderer. It doesn't say it about a person who is a ganef. He doesn't say about a person who, whatever. Because what is gava? But it's the antithesis of it's denial of God. It's exactly what it is. It's not that God kicked you out. You kicked God out. It's like, look at me, how great I am. When you don't acknowledge that everything you have comes from Hashem, It's already a big mistake. Continuing. Shenemar, what's the proof text? Zivchei Elohim ruach nishbara. What is considered the true zevach to Hashem or korban to Hashem is a broken heart. Now, I'm a spirit. Doesn't mean, again, I got to make sure I'm very clear on this, especially I have mental health professionals at the table, right? That it doesn't mean you're supposed to feel broken or broken spirited. It's an expression. It's a bitui. It means a person, again, you know who you are. You're happy with what you've done and always want to accomplish more. But at the same time, you know it's not because of you. It's because of the kelim that Hashem has given you. It's not just in their heart, but in their minds as well. They know who they are. Now, why does he say both in their heart and in their mind? Because intellectually, when I say myself, now I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about a person. I might say to myself, in my mind, I know I'm supposed to be humble about what I've accomplished. I know I'm supposed to be humble that I'm a great surgeon, and therefore I know that. But until I internalize that into my heart and I actually feel it, it's a disconnect. Because we all know, for example, if I ask you, should you learn more? There's not a person who would say no. I would hope. No one, because you know intellectually that you have to do it. And you're supposed to do that. But does that mean you do it? Not necessarily. Maybe you get inspired by somebody or by something and maybe you learn a little bit more. But so that's in here. It's in the machashava, but it's not yet in the lev. It has to move into there. But so he says to be an anav in this first stage is the machashava and the lev, the thoughts and internalized into the heart. And we're going to get to the maaseh hopefully still today. Furthermore, they said that Hashem himself chose Am Yisrael because we were considered the humble nation. Lo me'ruchem mikol ha'amim. He didn't choose us, he said, because you're the largest of all people. Amar lam HaKadosh Baruch Hu banai, my children, ani choshek bachem, I desire you, I want you. Sha'afilu kishani mashpia lachem gedula, even when I give you greatness, atem mema'atim atzmechem lefanai, you humble yourselves before me. For example, natati gedula la'Avraham, I gave greatness to Avraham. Amar v'anochi afar va'efer. All he said was, I'm just ashes and dust. Natati Gidula, I'm going to come back to this. Natati Gidula Moshe v'Aaron, I gave greatness to Moshe and Aaron. Amru v'nachnu man. They said, who are we? Natati Gidula David, and I gave greatness to David. He said, V'anochi tolat v'lo ish. I'm like a worm. I'm not even a human. Okay, so what does this all mean? First of all, let's go back to V'anochi afar va'efer. What does it mean when Avraham said, I'm just dust and ashes? Imagine someone comes, ask 10 questions.
Are you, and at what point are you holding great? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because in a way it crosses the line. Like with Moshe, when Hashem tells him to go to Pharaoh, he says, I can't speak or whatever, I'm gonna do something.
Right.
Like, was that on Niglut, or was that like an ingrate because Hashem's asking you to do something and you know, kind of snub him? Right.
So it's a very good question. First of all, Moshe and Hashem argue for 7 days about it. Yeah. See, God likes a good argument. I've seen plenty of people, myself included, get into them with it.
You have just a question.
He does, and we should. We always should. There is emunah shuta, where you just accept everything and believe and everything, and then there's times you really need to step up and have a discussion. So I'll answer you in general. I think I've addressed it, but when saying like this, if you make the statement, "I am nothing and I'm nobody in it," then that's being an ingrate. But when Avraham Avinu or Moshe, let's talk with Avraham, it sounds like I'm a nobody. But it's only a partial sentence when you think about it. What is it really? I am nothing, I'm nobody without you. And without you, what am I? So imagine I actually have a friend. I've known this guy for my whole life. He grew up in Chicago, guy Chuck Field. Did you ever know him? Chucky Field? Anyways, he's a professional ventriloquist. It's parenthetical statement. Parenthetical story. My father was the director of Camp Moshavah, Wildrose, Wisconsin. And went by Chucky Field, came to camp, and he kept complaining that he wasn't eating enough. No, it was a different story. oh, was it this one? Yeah, because it wasn't eating enough and he was losing weight. So how did that come out? Because he would always walk around like this, just holding his pants up all the time. My father once said to us, why are you doing that? He says, because if I let go, my pants are going to fall off. So somehow it got into another story where he also would walk, he came to like my arm, and he's walking like this. His arm is hurting him. He said, what happened? So my father he was a little sense of sarcasm. He says, oh, I'm so sorry. What did you do? He says, well, it really hurts. I can't, I got to keep my pants up and I can't, my arm. He says, oh, well, before it started hurting, what were you able to do with your arm? I said, well, I used to be able to go like this, but now I can't do that. So he realized, got caught up in it. Anyways, this kid was like a jokester. So he ended up being a professional ventriloquist. So now, end of parentheses, why am I mentioning ventriloquism? I have a puppet in my hand. You all know what's his name? Ahmed the Dead Terrorist. That's who's the guy that does him, and he is hysterical. Anyways, so I have the puppet in my hand, right? And you're all just watching me, and I'm throwing my voice, and he's doing all his stuff, and he's bowing, he's thanking. And then after the show, people come up to him and say, "Wow, you were great." He's just lying there limp inside a box, right? And finally, somehow he finds his voice. And, what did I do? The ventriloquist did all the stuff. He put his hand in, he made me move, he made my voice. It's exactly what we have, right? We do have what we accomplish, but it's only because Hashem enables us to do. So Anochi Afa Va'efer, but what I can do is because of Hashem. If it weren't, that's all I would be. Okay. So he says this, I think, so that actually helped me as far as what I was going to say about this topic, this pasuk anyways. So let's continue. This that the heart would not allow would not allow a person to be seduced by his station in life and how great he might be. If you can't get yourself to the point and say, wow, these accomplishments really are great. I have accomplished a lot in life, and I am the greatest, and I really am. If you can't use that to bring you to a point and make you think, just look at yourself in the opposite. What have you not done? You know, what are your faults? And again, when you talk about mental health, you talk about psychology, you can't look at just one side of the scale. You have to look at the holistic approach to the person. And when you do that, a person who, again, I'm in education, so many of my examples come from school. When a kid is parent teachers conferences were this week. Why May? I don't know, but whatever. So parents come to school. Let's say you have something that you have to say as a teacher to the parent about the child. That's not the most flattering. You don't come in and start off right away saying your kid stinks at math. He doesn't do his homework. He's no good. He's always late. Right? Because parents are going to shut down. But what you do is look. What a nice boy. He's been very helpful in class. And when he shows up, which is what we need to talk about. No, you want to do something positive before you slam the person. So in this case, when you look at your positives, if it brings you to the point of, wow, look how great I am, that's a problem. When you say, like I said to you, no, there's no one here who would be, I assume, there's no one here, myself included, who's satisfied with the amount of learning they've had in their lives to this point. You always want to grow. You always want more. You never want to plateau. So look what I haven't done yet, right? So there is a psychology to Sfirat HaOmer. If you were going to be going to do something fun, or you're going to be having a wedding, or you're going to be having a vacation, and you want to have a countdown chart, what do? You count down, right? You start 39, 38, 37, 36, down to 1. But for Sfirat HaOmer, what do? We're counting to Kabbalat Torah, right? Today is 27 days. So we've gone now 20. Why didn't we start off by 50 or 49, 48, and count down? Why counting up? So first of all, because it's an aliyah towards Kedusha, that's the obvious. But you have two options when you are climbing them up. Let's say you're going to be down in the wadi, right here below us, and you're going to climb up towards Efes Sheva. And you're not a mountain climber, guilty. And you start climbing, and you get up about maybe 30, 40 meters. You go, look, oh my gosh, look how far I still have to go. Or you say, wow, look how far I've come so far. So when it comes to growth in Torah, you don't want to say, oh my gosh, look how much there is to learn still. Like the Torah is so far away from me still. Or you can look back and say, well, I have accomplished something so far. So you get motivated by that to be able to move forward. And that's really my chesronot. What I'm lacking is this. But if this is what's going to help you focus to keep you grounded, okay. If this is what's going to help you focus to keep you grounded, okay. But either way, either direction you're going, it has to be in such a way that you don't become a balgava or a person who's haughty over it, but just an anav. Yeah. Yeah.
The famous thing is the cup that full optimist and a pessimist,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's the opportunist.
Yes.
Take
their drink water.
That's the Balgai.
Right. The balgava is
He's looking only for.
he's looking over for himself. That's correct. I had a friend who I said to him as follows, and he actually agreed. I said, you don't see the cup half full. You don't see the cup half empty. You don't see the cup at all. You don't even see the cup. He says, you're right. He says, I never would want to have that kind of a life. He had a tough life or whatever. Not my problem. Where am I here? And furthermore, even with those mitzvot you have accomplished, things you have acquired, you haven't done it to this absolute. I don't use the word perfection because we don't strive for perfection, but I'm going to use it anyways. You haven't done it the best way possible. There are very, very few things in your life you can say, I haven't done it. I can say I've done it the best I can, but you can almost never say I've done absolutely 100% perfectly. First of all, that's fine. We're not perfect. You can't be perfect, except my wife. So the idea that when I put on my tefillin this morning, if I were to say, I did the mitzvah this morning, the absolute best way possible, all the kavanot and all the everything. No, I did not. I know I didn't. I did it as best as I could this morning. I tried to focus. The more I learned, the more I try to be a little better at each mitzvah I'm doing. But so even those you haven't, be proud of what you've done, but realize you always could have done better. What if you're perfect? You're perfect. But your big chisaron, your one fault is you're human. You're a human being. The expression is you're born of woman, which nowadays you're born of parent one or parent two. Just joking. Stupidity. The big flush you hear, by the way, is the United States going down the toilet. Unbelievable. So just by the fact you're human, why is that a negative? Say again, Machiavelli. Okay, you want to expand? Perhaps, absolutely. Okay. So the fact that we are human, we know that there's an expression in Tehillim, Ein Adam ba'aretz asher ya'aseh tov v'lo yacheta. There's no such thing as a person who's all good and will never do a sin. It's not possible. It's not human, because then you're God, because only God is perfect. So the fact that you're not perfect already means you have a chisaron. You're a human being. So only who does not have something lacking is Hashem. Yes, Judy. Okay. Right. You want to hear a great thing about David and Bathsheba? I'll tell you. You mentioned it, so I'm going to mention it. I'm going to mention it now. I've taught Sefer Lachim a few times, and every time, obviously, spend some time on that. And the biggest problem people have with David and Bathsheba, besides of what the action itself, is that the Gemara says, "Kol omer David chata." Whoever said David sinned, eno ela toeh. He's mistaken. Well, David said chatati. He himself said, "I sinned." So what do you mean? Eno ela toeh. You're mistaken if you say he did. So the quick answer, that's not quick, but the general answer is that because he did tshuva, the action happened, but he did tshuva to such an extent that you say that he sinned. The sin is gone. He did sin at that time, like we've talked about in here. When a person does tshuva, now if I punch someone in the nose and I do tshuva and I pay the person, I did punch him and the person did had pain, but the sin aspect is dissipated. It's not the right word. Is gone as a result of tshuva. So that's the one way they look at it. The other, it was at Shul years ago, and I don't know why the person giving the Dvar Torah Friday night chose to talk about that, but he said where we put the accent on the one word, it changes the whole thing. We read it like this usually: Kol ha'omer David sakata. Whoever says David sinned, Eino ela toeh. He's mistaken. He said, Kol ha'omer David chatat. If you go out of your way and say what a sinner he was, you actually go on. He was a sinner. He was no good. You're mistaken because you don't know the whole story. You weren't there. No, it's a gigantic lesson in don't judge a person, right? I had this myself personally, where I've been teaching Sefer Shmuel for many, many years, both here and in the States, and I was not very kind to Shaul HaMelech in the way I described him. Over the years, I described him in very negative ways, and then Rav Shlomo Aviner came out with a Sefer about teaching Tanakh. It came out when the government here decided that it had to be taught, like basically in a way of biblical criticism, and how you wrote a book about how bad that would be. And yes, we have to do the Govei Naim, but you also have to understand who these people are, giants that we couldn't fathom. And he specifically was talking about Shaul. You don't know who he was and how he went through. And I felt terrible for all these years of how I spoke about Shaul HaMelech, who was technically the second king of Israel. Why was he the second king? Who was the first, technically, for 1 week? Who was a king of Israel for 1 week? Moshe Rabbeinu. During the Shivat Yemei HaMiluim, had the status of a melech. Yeah. Right. There's in the 7 days of dedication. Anyways, so I decided to do something about it. I wrote a letter to Shaul HaMelech publicly in English. I say why in English in a second. And I apologized to him that, I asked him for mechila publicly because publicly I said things about him that shouldn't have been said. So my dear friend Mordechai Tzion, who I will see today, that's Rav Hashem, took the letter and he showed it to Rav Aviner, who said, I want to translate it. He translated it to Hebrew and put it on his website, posted it. And I said in the letter that I wanted to go to his kever and ask him for mechila. So Rav Aviner says, we don't really know exactly where he's buried. Yeah, which is chaval, because I would definitely go. But he says, you accomplished, you did your tshuva. You asked him for forgiveness. That's also part of being an unav. I don't mean about myself. I'm saying general. We think we know people. You got to be very careful. Okay, being shiputi or judgmental, whether it's a person in Tanakh, there are certain people we can't do, like Yerav and Ben Nevat. The Tanakh keeps telling him, he sinned and caused people to sin, they're putting up Avodah Zarah and Dan and Beitel, whatever. How did I digress to here? I'm not sure. Let's move on. I wish that would be like something that could be like a visual, my brain just mapping it out as I'm speaking. That'd be so good. It'd be very scary. So you wouldn't want to see that. You have nothing to, you're mortal. We're human beings. We make mistakes. So you can't say, wow, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't know where that expression comes from. Any any greatness, any height, any level he achieves. Chesed el alav. Listen to that. I have that highlighted. You don't believe it. I have it highlighted in my book. What does it mean? This kind of answers what you were saying about it. Anything you accomplish, and I've been trying to get this across since the last class, is only because of a chesed of Hashem. Hashem gave you the tools to do it. Hashem gave you the ability to do it. I've already said, if your clients, for example, Rhonda and Martin, if your clients depended on me to do their taxes, they'd be in jail. Right? They'd be in jail. But in anything like that, if you had people who needed a caterer and it was my Betty Crocker mix, you'd starve, okay? So that when he gave you the kelim to do that, and you the kelim to the abilities and the wherewithal to do these things, it's a complete chesed from Hashem. That Hashem is giving us freely as a gift, in spite of the fact, who we are. We're just human beings. We all have our own talent. We all have, some people it's latent and it needs to be brought in that koach halapol from potential to actualization. And others, unfortunately, for many people, stays internally. So if you don't want to become you don't become a balgaiva, you don't want to be haughty, and you want to work on an ava, listen what you have to do. Okay, therefore, your approach should be, thank you, Hashem, I can teach. Thank you, Hashem, I can be a caterer. I can get up in I'm talking beyond that. That's the basic. I'm talking beyond. I'm talking about what we accomplish as far as, and that's not what I'm saying. No. You're missing my point. A person who has a talent, getting up in the morning isn't a talent. It's something we want to do every day, every single day. That's not a talent to get up in the morning. I don't care if a person's 120. It's not a talent. It's not. You can't tell me that getting out of bed is a talent. It's not. It can be an accomplishment, not a talent. Okay, I think it's a very big line between those two. A person who is a concert pianist who can perform, without even looking and playing like any piece that's put down in front of them, that's a talent. It's not and it's also an accomplishment, but it's a talent that they have. So we're saying that to thank Hashem, yes, for getting up in the morning and we say it every day. We say Modeh, we say our brachot and Tefillah Kas. We're going to get to that eventually. But when you have a special talent that you have put into gear and it's being used and it's helping others or helping the world or helping just another person, you have to thank Hashem for that. I'm going to mention something I mentioned the Tefillah class the other day. So those of you who were there, sorry, it's worth repeating, I think. In the beginning of Mizmor Shir Shabbat, which I pointed out has nothing to do with Shabbat directly. If you look at the words, it doesn't mention Shabbat at all, except Mizmor Shir Shabbat. So that's your homework. You can look into that. We started by saying, Tov lehodot l'Hashem, l'zamer l'shimcha el yom. It is good to give praise to your name and to sing to the one, you on Hashem on high. We change the person. Whereas we start off in the second person, third person to second person. We start off to Hashem. We say, Tov lehodot l'Hashem. It is good to give praise or thanks to Hashem, third person. L'zamer l'shimcha el yom. And then we address Hashem as you. How come in one sentence we change back and forth like that? Which happens, by the way, multiple times, but specifically here. So I had this idea, it turned out that the Vilna Gaon said it. He copied me. When we give praise to Hashem, it also means praise, means thanks. Like Lahodot means to thank, to praise, and to admit. They're all connected. And when we thank Hashem for everything, we recognize everything we have comes from Hashem, that builds a closer relationship with Hashem. And we move from a third person approach to Hashem to a second person, to a much closer relationship. So Tov lehodot Hashem, which brings us to Ulezamer l'shimcha el yom, be closer to your name Hashem as well. So that's what this is telling us as well. What is this similar to? A person who is truly poor, who has to go for a handout. In the beginning, at least, it's almost impossible for that person to not feel some sense of embarrassment. We're handout. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. We talk about it in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, much of the liturgy, in some of the slichot, Ashkenazi, Sfaradi, when we talk about Ani b'petach, we're like a poor person at the door, right? Does Hashem owe you anything? He doesn't owe you or me anything. There's no magiali. There's no, I deserve this. God, I davened so well today. I deserve this today. That bus should be here on time, exactly when it's supposed to be. Even God can't control Eget, but that's a different story. So I guess Hashem going, oh God, Eget, no, don't even mention Eget. So we don't, there's nothing that we deserve. Nothing. Everything is freely given to us. It's a chesed, like we say in benching. So when we accept that and we realize that we're just like an aniyah with an ayin, aniyah, poor person coming to Hashem for a handout every single day, then we could accept it. We can't say like imagine that I take a book. I love Piyutim, which I write. So let's say I take a book of Piyutim from the Ibn Ezra, and I take it and I say, look at what I wrote. I am so good. That's called plagiarism. Yeah, you just took his stuff, right? So we're just taking God's stuff and we're doing something with it. We're making it into something. We are connect. We acquire what Hashem gives us and we do something with it. He gives you the ability to breathe, right? He gives you the ability to talk and to walk and to sing and to paint and do the sifat. Thank you. Okay. So and that's a talent, and you're good at it. But where did that come from? Because Hashem gave you that ability.
But it's not the same as plagiarism.
No, it's not the same as plagiarism. It's a little bit of a wacky example. You're right. But it's the idea is that I didn't do it.
All of it,
Not necessarily.
where art, even art,
Right.
legally it is, I think, oh, but it's up to the man.
Yeah.
But it's taking something and using it in the same framework without
So,
actually changing enough.
Right. So
to
I'll,
this
correct. So I will tell you why I think it could be just a sentence, maybe. How about legally? A few years ago, I had read a quote from Nechama Leibovitz, and I posted it. But I forgot to put parentheses, Nechama Leibovitz. And I didn't do it on purpose. It got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shares, and people made it was, I'll tell you what is in a second. And someone wrote me, says, you do realize Nechama Leibovitz says, of course I know that. She says, well, you didn't write it. So, oh my God. And someone changed it to their profile picture. And what was it? Basically, I'm paraphrasing. It's nice to be good to people between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but it's better to be nice to people between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Something to that effect. And like, I couldn't believe it. And I actually took it down. I even posted, I'm sorry, I never meant to say something without attribution, because that's really dangerous. It's like, that's the height of haughtiness. I came up with this great idea. E equals MC squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. I even know what it means. But I do. Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. We'll move on because I'm really smart.
But you didn't do it intentionally. So it's
No.
like half an hour
No,
and
of course.
you
Yeah.
know,
If I, like I said before, I had this idea about Tov Lo Hashem, and I said, wow, it was a great idea. I thought it was, at least, the only going thought of it first, right? So there's a concept we say, Baruch Kivanti, which means, thank God, I was able to have the same intention. But if I had said it without the attribution, say, I thought of that, that's not good. Even when I've given talks in Pnei Shmuel for the Shabbat Shuvah, I'll mention, matter of fact, I'm going to see this man. I have a conference I'm going to in Ashdod right after class. I'll see this one rabbi who I've used some of his stuff as a basis for the shiur, for the class, the talk I give. And I say, well, it's Rabbi Gottlieb. You know what? I'm not ashamed of saying I stole this. I mean, I borrowed some of his stuff, right? It's fine. I read just to the end of this paragraph, please. The more this poor person, this mashal receives, the more mitbayesh he is, the more embarrassed he is. Like, okay, enough. So too with all people whose eyes are open to see themselves. As they see and each person sees them acquiring, achieving greatness or great things, it's me'et Hashem barach. It's from Hashem. Chinyan shamar David HaMelech ma'ashiv l'Hashem tagmulo yalai. In other words, I'm paraphrasing, how do you pay back Hashem? You can't. You can in one way. Do his mitzvot. Do his mitzvot. He has a very simple request. Ma Hashem alkecha doresh me'imach. What does Hashem want from you? Okay. So Moshe Rabbeinu gives when you start a new job, they give you a job description, hopefully. I'm not talking about, work at Starbucks, okay? I'm talking about a job where it's an office and hopefully you have a set of, where's the bathroom? Where's the coffee machine? What are their hours? What am I supposed to do here? Where's the coffee? Yeah, that's actually, I should have said that first. It's actually my first real job, which I had for 17 years. That's right. The owner of the company hired me because his wife basically told him to. Was teaching their daughter, and I had jobs right before I got married. Turned out it was a great position. He created something for me, made something to have a job, which was very nice. Which I made less. I made more then in 1981 than I make here now. Crazy. Welcome to Israel. Anyways, so I didn't really have a job description. I had to kind of make it up as I went along. He said in general, but in general, a person gets a job description. Moshe Rabbeinu gave us a job description from Hashem. Ma Hashem Elokecha, sho'el minmach. What does Hashem ask of us? Ki nira oto. You should be fear and awe of Hashem, to do his mitzvot, to walk in his ways. That's it. Last pasuk, at the second to last pasuk in Kohelet. Sof davar, akol nishma, et Elokim yira, ואת מצוותיו שמור, כי זה כל אדם. Bottom line says, after all the negative and havel havalim and the vanity of vanities, all says, bottom line, be a good Jew. Keep Torah and mitzvot. That's all I'm asking you. Is it easy? Who said it's easy? It's not easy. But you want to be a good Jew. You want to connect with Hashem. You want to grow. Grow through Torah, through mitzvot. But don't get full of yourselves. Don't get full of yourselves because it's still ultimately all Hashem. Have a wonderful day, everybody.